1987, the final night of the Glass Spider tour. In his Sydney dressing room, David Bowie looked in the mirror and saw something, a man slowly dying, not physically, spiritually. 86 shows across continents, 360 tons of equipment, millions in ticket sales, financial success by every measure. But the critics had been ruthless, and something fundamental inside Bowie had broken. The phone call he made that night would change everything. A year earlier, in the recording studio, the producer had noticed something unsettling. Bowie's eyes were empty. He was singing the songs on autopilot, technically perfect, but emotionally absent. The spark that had defined his career had dimmed to nothing. "I should just make some money and quit," he confided to friends. "I'm an empty vessel. I'm going to end up doing these stupid shows and singing Rebel Rebel until I fall down and bleed on stage." This wasn't just burnout. This was a man watching his creative soul extinguish in real time. 3 days after the tour ended, Iggy Pop called. They talked for 2 hours. About what? Only 3 people knew the full content. One is dead. But whatever was said fundamentally altered Bowie's trajectory. After that conversation, Bowie made what many would consider an insane decision. He was going to kill his ego, deliberately. In 1989, he formed Tin Machine. He didn't even put his name prominently on the album cover. EMI executives were shocked. This will destroy him. The album sold 200,000 copies. A 20-year partnership ended. The money dried up. Bowie was forced to sing songs he hated, just to pay the bills. But in 2013, he would say something that shocked everyone. "Tin Machine saved me. Financial disaster. Emotional salvation." So was this madness or calculated strategy? If you're curious about what happens next, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications. Because what we're about to tell you reveals one of rock history's strangest paradoxes. By the fall of 1987, David Bowie was a global superstar at the peak of commercial success. The Let's Dance album had sold 10 million copies worldwide. The Glass Spider tour had been the most financially successful tour of his entire career, filling stadiums and breaking box office records. But beneath that success, beneath the sold-out shows, something was rotting. The Glass Spider tour was ambitious as a concept. A 60-foot inflatable spider with illuminated vacuum tube legs, 20,000 feet of light cable, 5 professional dancers, elaborate theatrical vignettes. The set traveled in 43 trucks and weighed 360 tons. At the time, it was the largest touring set in the world, but critics tore the tour apart with barely concealed contempt. Rolling Stone called it pretentious, prioritizing production over substance. NME wrote it was overblown. And the most painful part, the critics were right. Deep down, Bowie knew it. Every single night performing Let's Dance in front of 50,000 people, he felt something inside him dying, performance by performance. He wasn't making music anymore. He was just playing the character of David Bowie. The artist had become a brand. On one of the final nights in Sydney, the storm was so severe that the dancers couldn't go on stage. Most of the elaborate set pieces couldn't be used. Bowie went on stage in the rain and wind, stripped of all the elaborate production, almost alone. And that night, standing there exposed, he realized something. All this massive production was actually killing the real music. It was burying the essence of what he loved about performing. In late 1986, during the recording sessions for the Never Let Me Down album, producer Tim Palmer noticed something disturbing. Bowie was physically present in the studio, arriving on time, delivering technically perfect vocal takes, but spiritually, emotionally, he was absent. The light was gone. Palmer would say in an interview years later, "It seemed like he wasn't there, like his body was in the room, but his mind was somewhere else. He was technically flawless, hitting every note perfectly, but there was no emotional connection." When Never Let Me Down was released in April 1987, critics were gentle, but nobody was convinced. Bowie's last 3 projects, the Labyrinth soundtrack, the Tonight album, and now Never Let Me Down, were all below Bowie's standards. During that dark period, Bowie was telling his inner circle, The best thing I can do is make money and then quit. Just cash out while I still can. I can't see any other alternative at this point. I'm clearly an empty vessel now. And in the end, I'm going to do these stupid shows like everyone else and sing Rebel Rebel until I literally fall down and bleed on stage. This wasn't the Bowie they knew. This was a man who'd lost the plot. Bowie was 40 years old. He'd been at the top of the music industry for over 20 years. Ziggy Stardust, Thin White Duke, the Berlin Trilogy, Let's Dance. He'd reinvented himself every single decade, always staying ahead of the curve. He'd survived punk, disco, new wave. But now something was different. He wasn't changing anymore. He was repeating himself. After the Glass Spider tour ended, while Bowie was at his home in Switzerland, the phone rang. It was Iggy Pop. The two men talked for 2 hours. The content of that conversation was never fully revealed, but that conversation would change the direction of Bowie's life. Iggy and Bowie's friendship went all the way back to 1971, to the wild days when both were still figuring out who they were as artists. In 1976, Bowie had taken Iggy on the Station to Station tour, essentially saving him from oblivion. Then the two of them moved to Berlin together, fleeing the excess of Los Angeles. There, in that divided city, Bowie had produced 2 of Iggy's classic albums, The Idiot and Lust for Life, albums that would define a generation. Berlin had been an escape for them, a purification ritual, a complete psychic reset. Now, 10 years later, Bowie was in crisis again. After that conversation, Bowie made a decision, a radical decision. He was going to destroy everything he'd done as David Bowie. His name, his ego, his star persona, all of it. And he would start over as just one member of a band. No special treatment, no star billing. In early 1988, when Reeves Gabrels, a relatively unknown guitarist living in Boston, answered his phone, he didn't expect his life to change. The caller was David Bowie. Gabrels' meeting with Bowie had been by chance. Gabrels' wife at the time, Sarah Terry, had worked on Bowie's press team during the North American leg of the Glass Spider tour. The interesting part, Bowie didn't even know Gabrels was a musician. At the end of the tour, Sarah had given Bowie a tape of one of Gabrels' bands. Bowie listened to the tape and was surprised. This guy was doing something different. Music that carried experimental, noise, industrial elements, but also had a melodic structure. It was exactly the kind of thing groups like Sonic Youth and Pixies were doing, which Bowie was interested in at the time. When Bowie called Gabrels, he spoke very clearly, "I want to start a band. And this band is going to be democratic. I'm just going to be one member. My name won't even be prominent on the album cover." Gabrels said yes, but he didn't yet know what a crazy journey he'd embarked on. Bowie's next step was to find a rhythm section. The Sales brothers, Tony and Hunt, had played on Iggy Pop's legendary 1977 Lust for Life album and tour. During that tour, Bowie had been on keyboards. Bowie ran into Tony Sales at a party in Los Angeles. It was the closing party for the Glass Spider tour. The two men talked and Bowie mentioned his plan. "I want to start a band, a real band. I want you and Hunt to be in it." Tony was surprised by the offer but excited. Bowie explained how serious he was. "We're going to be equal partners. Money will be split equally. Songwriting will be collaborative. I'm just a vocalist and sometimes guitar." In the summer of 1988, 4 men came together: Bowie, Gabrels, Tony Sales and Hunt Sales. They went into Mountain Studios in Montreux, Switzerland, to make their first recordings. The producer was Tim Palmer. Within the first 30 hours, they wrote and recorded a song as a band, "Heaven's in Here." Bowie told the group, "That's it, this is the feeling I want, raw, direct, unfiltered." The recordings moved quickly. Sometimes they were recording 1 song a day. Gabrels explained, "We'd record the songs, do the overdubs, sometimes finish the mix the same day." This speed was intentional. Bowie didn't want to leave time for second guessing. After some time, the recordings moved to Nassau in the Bahamas, to Compass Point Studios. In 6 weeks they recorded 35 songs. 14 of them were selected for the album. The songs were aggressive, noisy, raw and angry, and the guitars were so loud that sometimes Bowie's vocals couldn't be heard. Bowie didn't want them to fix it. There were long debates about the name of the band. Gabrel suggested White Noise, but Bowie rejected it, saying it could have racist connotations. Finally, they took the name from one of the songs on the album, Tin Machine. Tin, old, rusted, a material nobody cares about anymore. In early 1989, executives from EMI America Records gathered for a meeting. They were going to listen to David Bowie's new project. Expectations were high. When the play button was pressed, within the first 30 seconds, faces started changing. At minute 2, they started looking at each other. At minute 5, the CEO stopped the tape. Tim Palmer revealed the truth. Bowie doesn't want to be a solo artist anymore. He wants to be a member of a band, and this band is democratic. His name won't even be prominent on the album cover. After the meeting, EMI executives made a decision. They would try to sell Bowie's contract to other record labels. But nobody wanted it. They went to Sony. They were turned down. They went to Warner. They were turned down. Everyone said the same thing. Tin Machine is uncommercial. EMI was stuck. By contract, they had to release the album, but they didn't know how to market it. Eventually, they stuck stickers on the album covers. David Bowie's new project. The Tin Machine album was released on May 22, 1989, and then the dominoes started falling. When the album came out, critics' reactions were mixed but generally negative. Bowie biographer Paul Trinker wrote that the album was quickly labeled as pompous, dogmatic and dull. EMI was complaining. Preachy lyrics, repetitive melodies, minimal or no production. The first single, Under the God, created controversy. The lyrics attacked neo-Nazis, which was noble, but the music was so aggressive that many radio stations refused to play it. The song only reached number 51 in the UK. In the US, it didn't even chart. Bowie was surprised by the reaction, but he doubled down. He gave interviews saying, "This is the most honest music I've made in years." But nobody wanted honesty. They wanted David Bowie. In June 1989, Tin Machine went on their first tour, small venues, clubs. Bowie wanted it that way. He said, "I want to feel the audience's breath." He wanted intimacy after years of stadium spectacle. But the audiences were confused. They came expecting David Bowie and got something else entirely. People yelled Ziggy from the crowd. Bowie ignored them. Alastair Mackay from the Herald Scotland described the tour like this: "Despite all their experience, the band has bad timing, and Bowie's voice can't handle the concept of high-volume aggression." The tour was a financial disaster too. Small venues, low ticket sales, they were losing money. Tony Sales said in an interview, "People are angry because David isn't doing David Bowie." This was true, and it was exactly what Bowie wanted, but the price was heavy. After the tour ended, Tin Machine went into recording for a second album in the fall of 1989. They worked at Studios 301 in Sydney, Australia. Bowie was still determined. "We're going to make one more album. We're going to make it better." But EMI had other plans. When they listened to the Sydney tapes in early 1990, they made a decision. They weren't going to release a second Tin Machine album. Hunt Sales would say years later, EMI was a bit frightened by the sharp, single-less structure of the first Tin Machine album. EMI delivered the message to Bowie clearly. The Tin Machine project failed. "We won't release another Tin Machine album." In December 1990, Bowie left EMI. The 20-year partnership was over. Now Bowie faced a completely different problem, the danger of running out of money. The money he'd made from the Glass Spider tour was running out. No money was coming from Tin Machine, and no record company wanted to release Tin Machine 2. Bowie was in a difficult financial situation. His manager suggested a solution: do a solo tour, play the old hits, people are ready to pay. Bowie resisted at first, but the bills were piling up. In early 1990, Bowie made a decision. He announced the Sound Plus Vision tour. The pitch was, David Bowie will play his old hits for the last time. The marketing was clever. Fans bought tickets thinking it was the last chance. But for Bowie, this was torture. In an interview years later, he would say, "I had very mixed feelings about that tour. It was very hard, but it did two things for me. One, the money was so big it would have been stupid not to do it. 2, it was a good way to stop that side of what I did. It's very hard to get excited about Major Tom anymore. I'm absolutely revolted about singing Young Americans. The Sound Plus Vision tour lasted 7 months in 1990. Financially, it was a huge success. Bowie made enough money to breathe again. But artistically, it was a step backward. In early 1991, Bowie decided to give Tin Machine one last chance, but EMI was gone now. Eventually, he convinced Victory Music. Victory was a newly formed company, financed by JVC. Hugh Padgham was brought in as producer for the song One Shot. Padgham had worked with Bowie on the Tonight album, but when Padgham listened to the Sydney tapes, he was shocked. Most of these songs can't play on the radio. Tin Machine 2 was released in September 1991. Even the album cover created scandal. 4 ancient Greek statues, all naked. In the US version, the statues' genitals had to be airbrushed out. The album was received even worse critically and commercially than the first album. Spin magazine described the album as a sequel album as anticipated as Mannequin 2, On the Move. Rolling Stone gave the album 2 stars. In the UK, the album only climbed to number 23. In the US, 126. Victory Music was already in trouble, and Tin Machine 2 didn't help them. The company went bankrupt in 1994. In the winter of 1991-92, Tin Machine went on tour one last time, the It's My Life tour, but this time there were tensions within the band. Personality clashes had begun between the Sales brothers and Gabrels. The live album released at the end of the tour, Tin Machine Live, Oy Vey Baby, sold almost nothing. Fans were no longer interested. In mid-1992, Bowie made a decision. He pulled Gabrels aside and told him, "Reeves, I want to keep working with you. But Tin Machine is over." He said goodbye to the Sales brothers. Tin Machine left behind a total of 2 studio albums and 1 live album. Both were commercial disasters. The EMI relationship was over. Financially, Bowie had gone through difficult years, but the story doesn't end here, because Bowie's real thoughts about Tin Machine would emerge years later. In a 2005 interview with Uncut magazine, Bowie said, "Actually, I look back on the Tin Machine years with great affection." This was surprising. Everyone thought Tin Machine was the black mark of his career. But Bowie continued, "In those years, my passion and joy for making music returned." In 2013, he spoke even more clearly. "I had to restart my motor in music. I could easily have become reclusive and just done visual work, painted and sculpted. I'd made a lot of money. I thought, okay, now I can go off and play Gorgon in Tahiti. But then what do? Show up again somewhere at 60 years old." This confession explained everything. In 1987, Bowie had made a decision. Either he would quit music completely, or he would destroy everything and start from scratch. Tin Machine was the second option. "Tin Machine recharged me," he said in the 2013 interview. "I can't tell you how much it recharged me. It gave me back the urgency and joy of making music." Gabrels said years later, "Bowie was never the old Bowie after Tin Machine. That experience liberated him. Expectations didn't matter to him anymore. He just wanted to make interesting music, and that's exactly what happened." The albums Bowie made after Tin Machine, Black Tie, White Noise, Outside, Earthling, Hours, Heathen, Reality, they were all different, experimental, didn't care about expectations, and most importantly, Blackstar, Bowie's final album, the masterpiece released 2 days before his death. That album was made with the Tin Machine spirit, experimental, bold, free from commercial concerns, and critics declared it a masterpiece. David Bowie's Tin Machine adventure is one of art history's most paradoxical stories. Financial disaster, but artistic salvation. Commercial suicide, but creative rebirth. In 1987, Bowie faced a choice. Either he would continue being the David Bowie character and die creatively, or he would kill the David Bowie character and be reborn as an artist. He chose the second option. 200,000 in sales, the end of the relationship with EMI, financial crisis, attacks from critics, the obligation to sing songs he hated on the Sound Plus Vision tour. All of this was true, all of this was painful, but what did he gain in return? His freedom, his artistic integrity, and most importantly, his joy of making music. The most dangerous thing in the music industry is to become a prisoner of your own success, he said in an interview. After Let's Dance, everyone expected the next Let's Dance from me, but I never wanted to make another Let's Dance. Tin Machine gave me the courage to say no. Tin Machine was perhaps rock history's most expensive therapy session, but it worked. After that session, Bowie was a freer, braver, more honest artist for the rest of his life, because in the end, art isn't for making money, art is for saving your soul, and with Tin Machine, David Bowie did exactly that.